The Emotionless Descent, date October 16th, 1921. I never knew much of my grandfather. He was a quiet man removed from the bustle of everyday life and lived in the shadowed hills just beyond town in a decaying estate no one dared approach. My mother never spoke of him, as though his existence was an uncomfortable stain in the family's past, something better left undisturbed. Yet when he passed last autumn, I found myself the unwilling inheritor of his crumbling legacy, a house filled with decades of dust and silence and a diary, its pages brittle and yellowed, stained with ink. It was only after his funeral that I made my first journey to the old house. It sat on the cusp of a dead forest, the trees twisted and gnarled as if in agony. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and decay. I wasn't prepared for what I would find inside. My grandfather had lived as though he were already buried, the house a mausoleum of forgotten things. The floors creaked beneath my feet, and shadows danced in the corners where the light of day dared not venture. It wasn't until I began cleaning out the upstairs study that I discovered the diary, hidden beneath piles of moth-eaten books. I spent that night reading, and it was then that I began to understand the burden I now carried. The diary spoke of impossible things. My grandfather was not the quiet recluse I had imagined him to be. He had uncovered, through years of study and isolation, the existence of a species, no, a lineage hidden among humanity. And the revelation chilled me to my core. He was one of them, and so it seemed was I. He called them the quiet ones, beings indistinguishable from humans but devoid of the one thing that binds us to one another, emotion. They lived hidden among us, slipping into societies unnoticed, their purpose unknown, save for the cruel delight they took in erasing those they deemed unworthy of existing alongside. As I read, I felt an uncomfortable crawling sensation beneath my skin. He described it all so clinically, so coldly. What disturbed me the most was not the existence of these beings, but the slow realization my grandfather had come to that our family had been one of them for centuries. The entries grew darker, his writing more erratic. He described the transformation as a descent, as if he had once been fully human, but piece by piece he had begun to lose what connected him to mankind. At first he had felt grief for his wife's death, but then one day he realized he no longer remembered the shape of her face. He described his loss of fear, of joy, of sorrow, as if they were bodily senses he had now simply outgrown. He became numb to suffering, indifferent to love. And the more I read, the more I began to understand I had been feeling the same way for years. The entries painted a horrifying portrait of what I had always thought to be my natural self, my cool detachment, my inability to cry at funerals or laugh at jokes. I had dismissed it as introversion, but now I saw it for what it was, the beginning of the descent. My grandfather's final entries were the most disturbing. He wrote of fathers like him, like me, gathering in secret, watching. Some lived ordinary lives, undetected, while others had given in fully to their true nature, becoming predators, taking humans apart in the night and wearing their skin, blending seamlessly into the world above. They harvested the emotions they could not feel, feeding off their fear and despair of their victims like parasites. And here, in the dying lines of his journal, was the most terrifying realization. My grandfather believed I was meant to take his place. He described how the quiet ones passed their lineage to a chosen descendant when they were no longer able to maintain their facade. The numbness would spread, and eventually I would become like him, a hollow, emotionless creature. As I reached the final pages, I was left with a terrifying choice. I could feel the hollowness spreading in me. Small things had begun to lose their importance. Colors seemed dull, conversations with friends felt empty, laughter was foreign to me. The more I thought of it, the more I realized my indifference to life. The way I had distanced myself from human connection was not by chance. It had been happening all along. The last few words of the diary were written in a different hand. They were scrawled, hasty and barely legible. The house calls to you. The blood calls to you. You cannot escape it. You will become what you were born to be. The quiet ones are always watching, and when you're ready, they will come for you. I sat in the old study, the book trembling in my hands, my thoughts spiraling. The wind howled outside, the branches of the old trees scratching against the window as if the forest itself was reaching for me, urging me to answer the call. Could I resist? Could I escape this fate, or was it already too late? A noise from downstairs interrupted my thoughts. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, moved through the hall below. My blood ran cold. I was alone, or at least I was supposed to be. I stood, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt fear. The footsteps stopped, and then a slow, deliberate creak echoed up the stairs. Someone or something was coming for me. The air grew thick, oppressive, as though the very house had become sentient, alive, and aware of my presence. I don't know how long I stood frozen there, waiting for whatever lay beyond the door, but in that moment I knew. I was being watched. The quiet ones had come for me. The door began to creak open, and I felt the cold breath of inevitability settle over me. The descent had begun.